Hello and welcome to RSE Fire Modeling. In today's video we're going to talk about calculating the heat release rate for the fuel package in our reduced scale enclosure. We're going to start with some assumptions. First, based upon our investigation, the evidence, witness statements, and other information, we've determined that the heat release rate in the full scale enclosure is approximately 100 kilowatts. We also know that we want to build a 1/4 scale, which in decimal form is 0.25. The formula that we use is fairly straightforward and simple, and it says that the heat release rate in the reduced scale enclosure is equal to the heat release rate of the full scale enclosure times the length scale raised to the 5/2 power. If we go ahead and fill in some numbers, we say that the heat release rate of the reduced scale enclosure is equal to the full scale heat release rate, which is 100 kilowatts, times my length scale, and in this case it's 0.25 raised to the 5/2 power. And we want to make this easier for calculations, so we're going to say that the heat release rate for the reduced scale enclosure is equal to 100 kilowatts times the length scale, and 5/2 is the same as 2.5. So the heat release rate in the reduced scale enclosure is equal to 100 times this value. So let's use the calculator so we can see how to use that. We're going to say that the first thing we're going to put in is our length scale, so it's 0.25, and we want to raise that value to the power of 2.5, so we do yx and then 2.5 equals 0.031. 0.031. And we can see that this is approximately 3%. So we know that in a quarter scale, whatever your full scale heat release rate is, you simply take 3% of that. But that only works for a quarter scale. And you can work that formula out for all the other scales. And in some other videos, you'll see that we have a chart that helps you with that. Let's finish up our calculations. We say that the reduced scale enclosure, the heat release for that is equal to approximately 100 kilowatts times 3%, or 3.1 kilowatts. When we build our fuel package for our reduced scale enclosure, working on the concept of burn time, then we would have a fuel package that is approximately 3 kilowatts. Be careful out there. Some people scale this linearly. They take 100 kilowatts times the length scale, 0.25, and they end up with 25 kilowatts. That is absolutely incorrect. The heat release rate in the reduced scale enclosure does not scale linearly, but scales to the 5/2 power. This formula here is good for all scale lengths, whether it's a quarter, a third, or a 1/12 scale. And it's good for all heat release rates in the full scale, whether you have a 100 kilowatt fire, a 500, a megawatt. This is the formula that you use when you're calculating burn time and trying to determine the heat release rate for your reduced scale enclosure. Thank you, be safe, and happy fire modeling.